So, you made a pair of stays. You did your due diligence and did a mock-up, maybe two, and did a final fit with the real fabric. And yet, after sanding all that boning and binding all those freaking tabs, you put the finished thing on and it still doesn't fit. That's it, you're done. Give up, throw it away, throw all of them away. You'll never have well-fitted stays, so just go cry in a corner because you failed.
As if.
Let's alter some stays, y'all. These stays don't fit. They've never fit. Even with the stomacher, they're way too small. There is way too big of a gap here for me to feel supported. That is the big main issue. And these stays did not come with a stomacher. I had to add that because they were never the right size. Also, if you can't tell, the straps are ludicrously short. This is 100% a flaw in the pattern and not necessarily my own mistake, although I should have fixed it when I was putting these together. Now that we know the problems, we have to figure out how to solve them. Be aware that there aren't always universal solutions, and the solution is often based specifically on how your stays or corsets are constructed and how much wiggle room your past self gave you. But your first step will always be to see what you have to work with and figure it out from there. And if you've had to alter finished stays before, I would love you to drop down in the comments and tell me how you did it. Past Jackie was looking out for future Jackie. Do you see that there is a seam right here? That's because I put in the eyelets with both sides of the stays before I finished the rest of the stays. So now I can just go in and pull off the entire lining without having to faff about with the eyelets or the grommets. I learned this the hard way when I had to take in my Taco Bell corset, which unfortunately I was not thinking about modifying when I made it, and had grommets in it, not just eyelets, and it was a nightmare to take apart. So I do this in every single pair of stays, bodies, and corsets that I make, regardless of whether or not they're actually going to be reversible like these or not. And it makes it easy to make your stays reversible as well. Why make one when you can make two? I did not, however, think about that for the armhole eyelets. So we're gonna have to do a little bit of snippy snipperoo on those bits. All right, let's snippy snipperoo. Look, it's Halloween again! Y'all know I needed some instant gratification projects during the lobster gown saga. Going back in time. This is why past you should always look out for future you. Not only did I lay in those panels, but I also left myself lots of extra seam allowance here, which means that I should be able to get this to the size that I need without having to add any extra panels. I think there's going to be enough in these seam allowances because, as I always say, a very small change makes a big difference in corsetry. So if you've got the fabric, give your future self some slack and give yourself at least 1 full inch of seam allowance on a seam set in the front and a seam set in the back. That rhymed. The other thing we need to consider is the binding, whether it's worth taking off all of the binding and then adding, one set of extra binding in here to make up for the extra space that I'm gonna put in. But I think because I am sort of pressed for time for this, and I think it's going to be very small adjustments, and I have tons of black binding, I think I'm just gonna cut it and then patch it because the difference is not going to be that visible. Originally, I used black bias tape and I have more of it, but it's lost in the pit of despair. And I don't have the time to go look for it because I'm trying to knock this out for our annual Hobbit picnic. We're gonna have to fix that too. But luckily that's right on the seam, so it shouldn't be difficult. Time to rip! These particular stays are called the autumn stays, and I've linked to the pattern in the description if you're interested in purchasing them. They're history bounding stays, which is why the entire back is cut in one piece like this. One of the reasons I had a hard time with this pattern is that it has only 3 sizes, a straight, mid, and plus size that fit a 4 to 5 inch range of measurements each. I have a whole barrel of issues with that, but this was for a sew along, so I didn't have a choice in the pattern. One thing I wish past Jackie had done was serge the raw edges, but since I want to eke out as much space as possible, I'm opting to use the overlock stitch on my machine, which I can get a lot narrower than the 3/8 of an inch on my serger. So now we'll baste these seams together at 3/8 of an inch and see how it goes. It's been a minute since I've said this, so remember, corsetry equals precision, so make sure you're ironing your seams even during the basting stage. It makes a difference. That's a lot better, but my gap's not even, so let's see if we can fix that. Evening out the gap is simple. Figure out how much space you need to take in and quarter it. Make a mark at the narrowest part and grade your seam line out to the widest part. I know you're probably saying, but Jackie, my past self wasn't thinking ahead, and I don't have large enough seam allowances to make the adjustment. So what do? You add another panel. Don't freak out, it's not as hard as it seems. If I was gonna add another panel to a pair of stays, this is how I would do it. Is it the only way to do it? No. There are probably a million ways that you could add an extra panel. This is just how it seems the most logical to me. If you've done this before and have a different method, I would love, again, for you to go down in the comments and share. Let's make a lot of resources available to people so if they need help, they can find it. I'm gonna use my purple Cassandra stays by Scroop for this, just because I happen to have the pattern handy. I have no idea where the pattern got to for my autumn stays. Okay, so the best thing I would say to do is to kind of find where the underarm is and add your panel there. For me, that's going to be between these two panels here. Wow, with this lighting, you can really see how splotchy my dye job is. Wow, it really doesn't look like that IRL. Whoops. So we're going to put it between these two panels. That way it'll be a little less invisible in case everything doesn't match up perfectly. The first thing I'm gonna do is take some spare paper. I'm gonna do this on this roll just so it's easier for you to see. First, you'll need to determine how big of a panel you need to make. Figure out the total amount and have it, and that is how much you're gonna need to add on each side. For the sake of ease, I'm gonna say I need to add 4 inches total all the way around. So we're gonna make a 2-inch panel. That doesn't sound like a lot, but let me show you what we've got here. So I have my 2 pieces, and I'm gonna match them up with the notches here, because the way that these particular stays are built, it is very, very slanty. So I'm gonna tape this one first. So I just measured this piece, and actually this piece is 2 inches wide. So in theory, what you could do for this particular case, if you needed 2 inches, would just be to, cut another one of these. It's exactly what we want it to be, and match it up on the other side. You'll have to do a little finagling because, this seam and match this seam and this seam, but then once it's all together, so I would trace this out. This makes it really easy. Let's pretend that that's straight. And then I would just match my points up when I sewed it together and adjust this line, so that it is even. Now, what if you don't have a piece that's exactly the same size that you need? So we would still start by copying this piece, right? Because this is the piece it's going to be next to, and it's perfectly straight. So logically, this is a good place to start, right? So we're still gonna copy this over. And let's say we needed 3 inches instead of 2 inches. I would just come in here, add another inch. Now, I'm pretty good at eyeballing, but if you don't, use a ruler. And then let's erase this line. Okay, we want to transfer our marking over here. And then I would put this next to here. So this seam and this seam should match up exactly because I copied this seam here, but this seam and this seam may not be exact. So you'll probably have to fiddle with this on your actual canvas mock-up. We're gonna ignore the hips for the moment and put the side next to the side. Just make sure that it stays even. Just gonna move it in, okay, and complete this curve. Now again, I'm very good at eyeballing this because I've done this for a long time, but if you are afraid to eyeball it, just use your tailor's curve. Figure out where the curve is on this line, draw it out, boom. And then you'd cut out this piece. Again, I'm not being very careful right now just because I'm trying to do this fast. And you've got your new panel. Hopefully that makes sense to you. If it doesn't, please feel free to ask me questions in the comments. If you are asking me a question, make sure you create a new comment. Do not piggyback off of somebody else's because I might not see it. And then all you would have to do is redraw your boning channels, you know, put all your markings on it. You know, this is straight up and down. There's your grain line. And then just redraw your boning channels. You'll use your existing pieces as a guideline. And if you need further assistance on how to redraw boning channels from scratch, I actually have a video of that. It's kind of an old video, but I think it's pretty good. It's got lots of double entendres in it, and it's just how you redraw boning channels on stays, and I will link it in the description if you would like to watch it after this. Now you will definitely need to test this out on canvas first. I would do 2 layers of canvas with boning, attach it to your stays, make all of the adjustments you need to make. You may need to adjust the underarm curve, you may need to adjust the lengths of the bottom, you may need to cut up and create a new tab. Do that all on your mock-up first, and then go ahead and use your regular fabric. This is why it's always good to have a little bit of extra fabric on hand. You know, order an extra 1/4 of a yard if you can afford it. I keep everything, I don't throw it away for stuff just like this. If you're finding this video helpful, please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't, because we do a ton of corsetry on this channel. As always, I would also like to say a huge thank you to all of my supporters over on Ko-fi. If you have the means and would like to help support the channel financially, please consider checking out the pinned link below. Let's deal with the straps now. This is going to hurt. I mean, really hurt, but we're gonna lop them off. I decided to add a 6-inch strap extension in the shape of a rectangle, which is apparently more difficult than it should have been. Ta-da! All right, I've been wearing this for about an hour. It is much, much better. I think I'm gonna take it in just another smidge, maybe like 1/8 of an inch, just to give me a little bit more space. These are good. They've stayed on my shoulders, but I do feel like they're a little loose. So I think I'm going to take the strap up by just another 1/2 of an inch. And I think that's gonna be all I need to do before we're ready to lay everything back in. We'll take this in again the same way as we did before by tapering the seam line up. Because these stays are reversible, attaching the strap extension is just a little wonky. We'll start by sewing the interfacing along with the cranberry fashion fabric, right sides together. Repeat for the end of the strap. Fun fact, I bought this fabric thinking the design was cherries and thought that for almost a decade. Derp. Now you want to place your lining piece over your seam allowances. Replace the existing lining pieces. Note that I'm using a scant seam allowance on the one side to give me seam allowance along the eyelet hole side. This is really fiddly. This is one time when you really want to hand stitch. Trying to re-sew this on the machine would be a nightmare. Time for an ironing break. Before you go and sew on the lining, you want to take care of the binding. A lot of people bind both their layers together, but like making a seam around your eyelets or grommets, binding just one of your layers and tunnel stitching the other over top ensures that it's easy to get into your stays later to alter if need be. Tack down over your existing binding and then add the new binding over top. In retrospect, I wish I'd picked up some matching bias tape instead of this twill tape. It was just a little chonkier, and I think up close it's noticeable in the final product. Noticeable enough to change it now? Nah, but coulda, woulda, shoulda, right? I'm here to screw up so you don't have to. One last thing I feel like I should mention. Notice that we're really talking about making these wider or thinner. We're not necessarily talking about making our stays longer or shorter. That is not as easy to do once you have finished. You can get away with shortening them fine a little bit by cutting up tabs, or, you know, like the ones that I'm wearing in this particular case. They don't have tabs, you could just cut up the edge, but making them longer is not so easy because of the way that the boning channels are in. If you cut and add a panel, you're gonna have a heck of a time getting the boning to go all the way through the panel. You can do it, but it's gonna take a lot of work. So if you take anything away from this, it's make sure that the length of your body is decided before you get to your final fitting stage, because that is going to be much harder to change if you need to down the road. And now it's time to add the lining back in. Jackie, where's the footage? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? I thought I filmed it, but I can't find it anywhere. That's ridiculous. You label everything meticulously. I must have dreamed I filmed it instead of really filming it. That's unacceptable. Lobsters. Oh, yeah. Well, this is embarrassing. Here's what the green side looks like with the lining laid in. Well, let's see what this baby looks like now that it's finished. If you enjoyed this video and would like to watch some more fun corsetry content, I'd love for you to check out this video here on the screen. That's it for me. Thanks for watching. I love y'all, and I'll catch you in my next video. It needs to be over here. Whoop! Moving over. Kermit the Frog here. I need a life.